Fund balance is the product of the difference between your revenue and expenses. The state of New York allows you to maintain a 4% balance into the next school year for unfunded emergency expenditures. We're going to begin with the 2011-12 year to provide some history. You will notice on the second line the revenue and expense. That is a net amount. So for that year we expended $150,000 more than we took in. However, if you'll notice the next line down, transferred from tax certiorari reserve. That is money that was transferred in to cover the expenses for tax cert settlements. The state of New York mandates that you cannot pay tax settlements for prior years from a tax cert reserve. It must go through general fund. So therefore you pay the expenses out of general fund, but then you transfer the money in to fund balance from the tax cert reserve. So the subtotal then is the revenue and expense plus the tax certs. So in essence, we actually underspent by $1 million on the 2011-12 year. That figure will tie in with the detail sheet of the tax cert reserves. You will notice continuing down in 11-12 year, you have to add back the encumbrances that were outstanding from the previous year to fund those. Encumbrances are basically purchases that you're committed to doing for the future year, but you have not paid the invoices yet. The next line down under transferred into tax cert reserve is how you have expended the extra that is in your fund balance for that respective year. You'll notice in 11-12 the $1,042,000 ties in with the detail from the tax certiorari reserve right here. Also in 11-12 year, there was an additional $137,000 put into the appropriated fund balance for that year. If you look down below the end of the year balances, our fund balance was the $2,046,240, which is the 4% max allowed by the state of New York. Appropriated fund balance was increased to $422,000, and that is the first line item for the next year's budget. Reserve for encumbrances, again, those are encumbrances where we've issued purchase orders and we have not received the items yet, but that we are committed to pay. The tax certiorari reserve balance at the end of that year was $1.9 million, and that ties in with the detail for the tax cert reserve right here. The reserve for liability employee benefits, that is a fund that is to cover vacation leaves, sick leaves, etc. that are due employees. And at that time in 11-12 we did not have a workers' comp reserve. So now let's go to the 12-13 school year. You'll notice there's some variances there. It looks like we underspent by $5 million that year. Actually, that also includes a $3.575 million tax ban that we borrowed, and that was with voter approval. It was outlined in the budget that year. Again, the state of New York states that you cannot put any money in or take it out of a tax cert reserve directly. You must go through general fund. So that is detailed below right here, where the $3,575,000 borrowing was transferred back out of fund balance into the tax cert reserve along with 1.4 million. At the end of the year, you'll see that our fund balance was actually the 2.1, which is the 4%. Again, we didn't change the appropriated fund balance, 422,000. The encumbrances are actually purchase orders that were placed. The tax cert reserve at the end of that year was 4.5 million, basically attributable to our borrowing, and the employee benefits were remained the same. The following year, again, it's the same procedure, same format. There was only a few variances that year where we had been underfunded by the employee benefit liability. The auditors account for that. They actually give us the figure and they do an actuarial. So we had been previously underfunded, and we now are up to the balance in that year that is stated by our auditors, and which is stated also in board policy that we need to be completely funded. That year, we also made the decision to become self-funded for workers' comp. That saved us a considerable amount of money, and we also had a refund from our previous consortium, so that money was put into the workers' comp liability reserve fund for future potential claims. That scenario follows all the way through. So you can see the balances as of the end of 14-15. The fund balance of 2,306,000 is really the only fluid amount in reserve funds. Your 422,000 is used for the next year budget. Again, your reserve for encumbrances, those are purchase orders that are already placed and the district's committed to paying those bills. The reserve for tax certiorari at the end of 14-15 was 2.991 million, and that again ties into the detail on the tax cert reserve for that year. You can see the 2.991 million right here. In 15-16, we have paid out, you can see the detail of all the amounts that we've paid out to date, and we're anticipating a balance of 199,000 at the end of 15-16 school year. However, we still have a couple of other payments that need to be made in 16-17 of about 600,000. So as of right now, we have a shortage of about 411,000 in that tax cert reserve. If you have any questions on any of these explanations or you'd like additional information, please feel free to contact me.